The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Dae-ho Kim walked through them slowly, his black uniform marking him as the last human ambassador to ever enter this room. Behind him, the doors sealed shut with a final click that echoed through the vast space. The chamber was enormous. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows that stretched up toward a golden dome. At the center, a raised platform held the Council of Five, the most powerful species in known space. Their leader, Veltara of the Veltari Empire, stood tall with her blue skin gleaming under the lights. Her 4 arms moved as she spoke, each gesture precise and commanding. "We gather today to address the human problem," Veltara announced. Her voice carried to every corner of the chamber without amplification. "For 200 years, we have watched this young species stumble through space. They fight too much. They question too much. They refuse to follow the proper ways." Dae-ho felt his hands clench into fists at his sides. He had been Earth's voice in this place for 15 years. He had tried to make them understand that humans could learn, could grow, could become valuable members of the galactic community. But every attempt had failed. "They are children playing with weapons they do not understand," continued Counselor Zenth of the Korath Federation. His reptilian head bobbed as he spoke. "Their military tactics are crude but effective. This makes them dangerous. Their diplomacy is worse," added another voice from the platform. "They speak of equality when they should show respect to their elders. They have been in space for barely 2 centuries. We have ruled the stars for thousands of years." Dae-ho stepped forward. The rules said he could speak once before the vote. "Honored counselors," he began, his voice steady despite the anger burning in his chest. "My people have made mistakes. We are young, yes, but we have also contributed to this galaxy. Human medical advances have saved millions of lives. Our engineering has improved jump drive efficiency by 30%. Our explorers have found new trade routes that benefit everyone." Veltara's laugh was like breaking glass. "Yes, you have been useful. But usefulness is not enough. You must also be civilized. You must know your place." "And what place is that?" Dae-ho asked. "Far from here," Veltara replied. "The Council has decided. Humanity will be relocated to the Outer Rim. You have 1 solar cycle to evacuate all human settlements within Council space. Any human found in civilized space after that time will be treated as an invader." The chamber erupted in sound. Some species cheered. Others muttered among themselves. A few, very few, looked uncomfortable with the decision. Dae-ho stood frozen as the reality hit him. Exile. Complete banishment from the galaxy they had called home. "You cannot do this," he said, his voice rising. "We have rights. We have treaties." "Treaties can be changed," Zenth replied. "Rights are earned through centuries of proper behavior. Your species has failed this test." "Where exactly are we supposed to go?" Dae-ho demanded. "The galaxy is vast," Veltara said with a dismissive wave. "Find empty systems. Build new worlds. Perhaps isolation will teach you the humility you lack." On Earth, Hyjin Park received the transmission 3 hours after the council vote. She stood in the war room deep beneath Sol, surrounded by screens, showing the positions of every human ship and colony in space. The message from Dae-ho was short and brutal. "They voted us out," his voice said from the speakers. "All of us. 1 year to leave council space completely." The room fell silent. 47 star systems, 12 billion people living away from Earth, hundreds of space stations, mining platforms, and research outposts. All of it had to be abandoned or moved. "How many ships do we have?" Hyjin asked her aide, a young man named Junwoo Lee. "Not enough," Junwoo replied, checking his tablet. "Even if we use every transport, cargo hauler, and passenger liner, we can maybe move 8 billion people. The rest will have to stay on Earth," Hyjin finished. "At least until we can build more ships." "Where will we take them?" asked another officer. "The Outer Rim is mostly dead space. No good planets, no resources worth mining. That's why nobody else lives there." Hyjin stared at the galaxy map on the main screen. The Outer Rim was colored red. Unexplored, dangerous, unwanted. It was where the council dumped their garbage and sent their criminals to die. Then we'll make it work, she said finally. We always have. The evacuation began immediately. Human. Fleets moved through space like rivers of light, carrying people and cargo toward the galaxy's edge. Some colonists fought the order, refusing to leave homes they had built with their own hands. Others went quietly, understanding that resistance would only make things worse. Junwoo worked 18-hour days coordinating the massive operation. He had been just a junior analyst before the exile order, but his talent for logistics quickly moved him up the ranks. He stood in the command center, watching hundreds of dots move across the screen as ships carried humanity away from everything they had known. "Sir," called a technician, "we're getting reports from the advanced scouts." "What kind of reports?" Junwoo asked. "Strange readings from some of the rim systems. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology." Junwoo frowned. "Council technology?" "No, sir. This is something else. Something old." On the Council worlds, life continued as normal. News reports mentioned the human exile briefly, then moved on to more important matters like trade negotiations and border disputes. Most citizens of the galaxy had never met a human and didn't care where they went. "Good riddance," said a Veltari merchant on the trade station orbiting Nexus Prime. "Never liked dealing with them anyway. Too pushy. Too eager to change things." A Korath engineer nodded agreement. "My cousin said they asked too many questions about our jump drive designs, always wanting to know how things worked instead of just using them." But not everyone was happy with the decision. In the deep archives beneath the Korath homeworld, an old scholar named Kithron studied ancient texts. He had spent his life learning about the rise and fall of galactic civilizations. The patterns were always the same: pride before the fall, dismissal of new ideas, failure to adapt. "This will not end well," he muttered to himself as he watched the last human ships disappear from Council sensors. The young species always surprise us in the end. On the bridge of the transport ship, New Dawn, Daeho stood looking out at the stars of the Outer Rim. Behind them, the lights of Council space grew smaller every hour. Ahead lay empty darkness and unknown dangers. "Any regrets, sir?" asked the ship's captain. Daeho was quiet for a long moment. "They think they're sending us away to die," he said finally. "They think the Rim will break us, make us give up and crawl back begging for forgiveness. Won't it?" Daeho smiled, and there was something cold in the expression. "They don't know humans very well, do they? We're at our best when everyone counts us out." The captain looked puzzled. "Sir?" "Give us a few decades out here," Daeho said, still watching the stars. "See what we build when nobody's watching. See what we become when we don't have to play by their rules." The ship continued into the darkness, carrying its human cargo toward an uncertain future. Behind them, the Galactic Council congratulated itself on solving the human problem. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. In the Outer Rim, among dead worlds and forgotten systems, humanity would find something that would change everything. They would discover that being cast out wasn't a punishment. It was an opportunity. The galaxy had given them exactly what they needed to become something greater than anyone imagined. They just didn't know it yet. 63 years had passed since the exile. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity, but humanity had not forgotten about survival. Taemin Choi stood on the observation deck of Haven's Edge Colony, watching the twin suns set over the rocky landscape. The planet was a nightmare by Council standards. Too hot, too dry, with an atmosphere that needed constant filtering just to breathe. But humans had made it work. The colony stretched for kilometers across the valley below. Domed buildings reflected the orange sunlight while underground tunnels connected everything in a vast network. Gardens grew in carefully controlled environments, producing food that could feed 50,000 people. Water recyclers turned the planet's acid rain into something humans could drink. "Another transport arrived today," said So Young Han, joining Taemin at the window. She was the colony's chief engineer, a woman who could make machines work in conditions that would kill most technology. "Refugees from the Keth system. Council forces are expanding again." Taemin nodded grimly. "How many?" 800. "Mostly families. Their mining operation got shut down when the Veltari decided they wanted the system for themselves." "We'll find room," Taemin said. "We always do." That was humanity's new reality. When the council species decided they wanted something, they took it. Humans who had been living in border systems for decades were forced to move deeper into the rim. Each wave of refugees brought stories of lost homes and broken dreams. But they also brought skills. Engineers who understood alien technology, scientists who had studied council databases for years, soldiers who had served in peacekeeping forces. Humanity was being compressed into the galaxy's unwanted corners, and that compression was making them stronger. The morning shift found something interesting in the deep mines, So Young said. You should come see. They took a transport down into the colony's lower levels. Haven's Edge had been built around an old mining operation, digging deep into the planet's crust for rare metals. But as they went deeper, they had started finding things that didn't belong. The elevator dropped for nearly a kilometer before stopping. Taemin followed So Young through a series of tunnels carved from living rock. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. The air was cool and still. Here, So Young said, stopping at a heavy door marked with warning symbols. The miners broke through this morning. Beyond the door was a chamber that took Taemin's breath away. The room was huge, with walls that curved up into darkness, but it wasn't empty. Strange machines lined the walls, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. In the center of the room, a pillar of black stone rose from floor to ceiling. What is it? Taemin whispered. We think it's a computer, So Young replied. Or maybe a library. The energy readings are off the charts, but it's completely stable. Been running for thousands of years. Taemin walked closer to the pillar. The symbols on its surface seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Who built this? Nobody knows, but this isn't the first one we've found. That was true. Over the past decade, human colonies across the rim had been discovering similar ruins. Always deep underground, always ancient beyond measure, always containing technology that made council science look primitive. Byung-ho Kang had made it his life's work to study these discoveries. He was an explorer, one of the few humans who ventured into completely unknown systems. His ship, the Wanderer, was equipped with the best sensors humanity could build. It wasn't much compared to council technology, but it was enough. Today, he was orbiting a dead world in an unnamed system, studying ruins that covered an entire continent. His sensors showed massive structures buried under millions of years of dust and erosion. But deep scans revealed that some of the machinery was still active. Computer, begin recording, Byung-ho said. Day 47 of the Kepler expedition. I've found clear evidence of a starfaring civilization that predates anything in council records. The technology appears to be quantum-based rather than gravitational. If I'm reading these scans correctly, their power systems could run a planet for 1,000 years. He paused, looking at the readouts. The weird part is how similar these ruins are to what we've found on other worlds. Same architectural style, same technology signatures, same age. It's like an entire galactic civilization just vanished. Byung-ho's computer chimed softly. Incoming transmission from Haven's Edge. Put it through. Taemin's face appeared on the screen. Byung-ho, we need you back here. So Young thinks she's figured out how to activate one of the devices. Which one? The pillar in Deep Site 7. She says it might be some kind of data storage system. If she's right, we might finally understand who built these things, Byung-ho finished. I'm already on my way. The journey back to Haven's Edge took 3 days. When Byung-ho arrived, he found the colony buzzing with excitement. Word had spread that the engineers were about to attempt something that could change everything. Deep Site 7 had been expanded into a proper research facility. Humans in environmental suits worked around the ancient machines, taking measurements and running tests. So Young stood at a control station that had been built into the room's wall. The trick was figuring out the power requirements, she explained as Byung-ho joined her. These machines use some kind of quantum field manipulation. Our regular power systems aren't compatible. But I think I found a workaround. She gestured to a collection of human-built devices connected to the ancient pillar by thick cables. We're using our fusion reactors to generate a specific frequency pattern. It should be enough to establish a basic interface. Should be? Taemin asked nervously. Well, Either it works or we blow up half the colony, So Young said cheerfully. Only one way to find out. She began entering commands on her console. The human-built machinery hummed to life, sending power through the cables into the ancient system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols on the pillar began to glow. The change was dramatic. The entire chamber filled with soft blue light as the ancient machines awakened. Holographic displays materialized in the air, showing star maps and technical diagrams that made no sense to human eyes. But the computers were recording everything. It's working, So Young breathed. We're actually interfacing with technology that's older than our entire species. But the most important discovery came when they started translating the data. The star maps showed the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. The technical diagrams revealed technology far beyond anything the Council had achieved. And the historical records told a story that changed everything humans thought they knew about the galaxy. They called themselves the Builders, Byung-ho said, reading from the translated files. They had an empire that spanned the entire galaxy. Every star system, every planet, every moon. They had been there. What happened to them? Taemin asked. War, Byung-ho replied grimly. A civil war that lasted for thousands of years. It destroyed their civilization so completely that even their enemies forgot they had ever existed. So Young looked up from her console. But they left behind more than just ruins. Look at this. The holographic display changed, showing detailed technical specifications for devices that made human technology look like stone tools, faster than light drives that could cross the galaxy in weeks, weapons that could destroy planets, manufacturing, systems that could build entire fleets in days. They hid it all, So Young continued, scattered their technology across dead worlds in the Outer Rim, places where nobody would think to look. Places where exiled species might eventually find it, Taemin said slowly. Exactly. The implications were staggering. While the Council, species fought over scraps in civilized space, humanity had stumbled into the greatest treasure trove in galactic history, ancient technology that could reshape the balance of power forever. But they would have to be careful. If the Council learned what humanity had found, they would take it away. They would claim it belonged to the civilized species who deserved it more. We keep this quiet, Taemin decided. We study it. We learn from it. And we use it to build, something the galaxy has never seen before. Over the following years, more discoveries followed. Human colonies across the rim found ancient sites and slowly learned to activate them. Each discovery brought new knowledge, new capabilities, new possibilities. The galaxy thought humanity was slowly dying in the Outer Rim, struggling to survive on worthless worlds. They had no idea that humans were quietly building the foundation of an empire that would dwarf anything in recorded history. In the abandoned systems where nobody bothered to look, humanity was becoming something entirely new. They were no longer the young species that had been cast out for being too violent and primitive. They were becoming the inheritors of the galaxy's greatest civilization, and nobody knew it was happening. The shipyard at Titan's Edge was invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in an unnamed system, it was one of humanity's greatest secrets. No council ship had ever come within 50 light-years of this place. Ji-hoon Yoon stood on the command deck, watching the construction of humanity's first true warship. The vessel taking shape in the zero-gravity assembly bay was unlike anything that had ever been built. It used technology that the ancient builders had perfected millions of years ago, improved by human engineering and adapted for modern warfare. How? Long until the first squadron is ready? Asked Yoon-ji Lim, joining him at the observation window. She was the head of humanity's new diplomatic corps, though her job had nothing to do with traditional diplomacy. 6 months for the prototype, Ji-hoon replied. 2 years for a full battle group, 5 years for a fleet that could take on the entire Council Navy. That's faster than anyone expected. Ji-hoon smiled grimly. Builder manufacturing technology is incredible. Once we figured out how to operate their automated systems, production speed increased by a factor of 50. We can build ships faster than the Council can count them. The ship in the assembly bay was beautiful in a deadly way. Its hull was made from materials that didn't appear on any periodic table, shaped by force fields that could manipulate matter. At the atomic level, Weapon systems based on quantum manipulation could punch through any known armor. And most importantly, the entire vessel could become completely invisible to every type of sensor the galaxy used. Ghost ships, Yunji murmured. That's what the crews are calling them. Good name, Ji-hoon agreed. They'll appear out of nowhere, do their job, and vanish before anyone knows what hit them. But shipbuilding was only part of humanity's transformation. In hidden bases across the Outer Rim, humans were rebuilding their entire civilization using builder technology. Cities that could house millions were constructed in months. Terraforming systems turned dead worlds into gardens. Manufacturing centers produced everything from medical supplies to quantum computers. Woo Sung, Kim knew none of this officially. As far as any record showed, he was an independent trader who moved cargo between council systems. His ship was old and unremarkable, the kind of vessel that security forces ignored. But hidden in his cargo holds were sensors and communication equipment more advanced than anything the council had. Today he was docked at Nexus Prime, the council's capital, listening to conversations and recording data. His mission was simple: learn everything about council military capabilities, political divisions, and economic weaknesses. Information that would be crucial when humanity finally revealed itself. Another border dispute between the Veltari and the Korath, he reported during his weekly transmission to human intelligence. Their fleets are positioning for what looks like a major confrontation. Both sides are pulling ships from other sectors. The response came back on a quantum-encrypted channel that was impossible to intercept. Understood. Continue monitoring. How are the recruitment efforts going? Woo Sung glanced around his small cabin before answering. Better than expected. I've made contact with 17 species that have grievances against the Council. Most are minor powers who've been pushed around for centuries. They're very interested in alternatives to the current system. That was another part of humanity's plan. While they built their fleet and perfected their technology, they were also building alliances. Species that had been overlooked or oppressed by the Council were quietly contacted and offered something better. The Tarachi Republic is particularly promising, Woo Sung continued. They have 30 systems and a decent industrial base, but the Council treats them like servants. Their government would support almost any challenge to Veltari dominance. Keep building those relationships. When the time comes, we'll need friends. The transmission ended, leaving Woo Sung alone with his thoughts. He had been working undercover for 8 years now, watching the Council make the same mistakes over and over. They were so convinced of their own superiority that they couldn't see the cracks forming in their empire. Pride always came before the fall. It was a lesson humans had learned the hard way. Back at Titan's Edge, Ji-hoon was meeting with the other leaders of humanity's secret project. They called themselves the Restoration Council, though their goal wasn't to restore the old human civilization. They were building something entirely new. Industrial production is ahead of schedule, reported Yoo-jin Song, the woman in charge of manufacturing. We now have 47 fully operational builder foundries across 15 systems. Current output could supply a 1,000,000-ship fleet. Defense network status? Ji-hoon asked. All Rim colonies are now protected by stealth orbital platforms, said another officer. Council forces could search for 1,000 years and never find our installations. Intelligence reports? Yoon-ji consulted her tablet. Woo Sung confirms that the Council is becoming increasingly unstable. Border conflicts are escalating, and several species are considering leaving the alliance. Economic inequality is creating unrest on dozens of worlds. Perfect, Ji-hoon said. A divided enemy is a defeated enemy. But the most important development was happening in the research laboratories hidden beneath the surface of New Terra, humanity's secret capital. Scientists were not just copying builder technology, they were improving it. Human creativity combined with ancient knowledge was producing innovations that even the builders might not have imagined. Dr. Kyung-ho Lee stood in Laboratory 7, watching the final test of humanity's greatest achievement. The device on the A test bench looked simple, a small crystal matrix surrounded by quantum field generators. But if it worked as designed, it would give humanity an advantage that could never be overcome. Beginning final activation sequence, announced the lead technician. The device began to glow with an inner light that seemed to bend space around it. Energy readings spiked as the quantum fields aligned in perfect harmony. Then suddenly, the device vanished. Target displaced to coordinates 77 Alpha, reported the sensor operator. Clean transition, no energy signature. Dr. Lee smiled. Bring it back. The device reappeared exactly where it had started, completely unchanged. By its journey, they had done it. Humanity had perfected instantaneous transportation across any distance. How far can it move objects? Asked his assistant. Theoretically, anywhere in the galaxy. Distance doesn't matter when you're stepping outside normal space-time. The implications were staggering. Human ships could appear anywhere without warning. Troops could be deployed to any planet instantly. Resources could be moved across the galaxy in seconds. It was the ultimate strategic advantage. We need to inform the Council immediately, Dr. Lee said. Within hours, the news had reached every human leader in the Outer Rim. They had achieved something that seemed impossible just years before. Humanity now possessed technology that made them effectively unstoppable. But with great power came great responsibility. The question was no longer whether humanity could challenge the Council. It was whether they should. We could destroy them, Ji-hoon said during an emergency meeting. Of the Restoration Council, our ships are invisible, our weapons are unstoppable, our technology is beyond anything they can imagine. We could end the Council's rule in a matter of days. That's not who we are, Yoonji replied firmly. We didn't build all this just to become conquerors. We built it to create something better. But they exiled us, another council member protested. They tried to destroy our civilization. Don't we deserve revenge? Revenge is what they would expect from us, said Kyung-ho, who had been invited to speak about the new technology. They always said we were too violent, too primitive. If we prove them right, we become everything they accused us of being. Then what do you suggest? Ji-hoon asked. We give them a choice, Yoonji said. We reveal ourselves and offer them a chance to join something greater. Those who accept our terms can be part of the new galaxy we're building. Those who refuse get left behind, Ji-hoon finished. It was a bold plan, risky, but it was also the most human approach possible. Instead of destroying their enemies, they would try to convert them. Instead of ruling through fear, they would lead through example. Miyu, vote was unanimous. Humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy, but on their own terms. They would show the Council what they had built in the darkness of the Outer Rim. They would demonstrate the power they had gained through ingenuity and determination, and they would offer everyone a choice: join the future or be left in the past. The age of hiding was over. Soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity had become during their long exile. Some would be amazed, others would be terrified, but none of them would ever underestimate humans again. The war between the Veltari Empire and the Korath Federation had been raging for 2 years when the impossible started happening. Admiral Sang-min Park watched the tactical display from the bridge of the HSV Shadowhawk, one of humanity's most advanced stealth ships. They were observing a massive fleet battle in the Kepler system, where both sides had committed their best forces in a fight for control of valuable mining worlds. Veltari 3rd Fleet is moving to flank the Korath positions, reported his tactical officer. Both sides have committed everything they have in this sector. Perfect, Sang-min said quietly. Begin Phase 1 operations. The human fleet was invisible to both sides. 50 ships hung in space like ghosts, their advanced cloaking systems making them undetectable to any Council technology. They had been watching this battle develop for weeks, waiting for the right moment to intervene. But humanity wasn't here to help either side win. They were here to make sure both sides lost. Target the Veltari supply convoy first, Sang-min ordered. Disable their engines and life support, but leave the crews alive. We want survivors to tell the story. The human ships moved like shadows through the battle zone. Their weapons were precise beyond anything the Council had ever seen. Energy, beams that could target specific systems without destroying entire vessels. Within minutes, the Veltari supply ships were drifting helplessly in space. Sir, the Korath are moving to exploit the gap in Veltari lines, reported the sensor operator. Now target the Korath heavy cruisers. Same protocol. The invisible fleet struck again, Korath warships suddenly found their engines failing and their weapons offline. Their crews had no idea what was happening. One moment they were advancing to victory, the next they were sitting ducks. Both sides stopped fighting and began looking around desperately for the source of the attacks. Their sensors showed nothing. Their communications were full of confused reports and growing panic. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," came a transmission from the Veltari flagship. Sang Min smiled. "Open a channel. All frequencies." His image appeared on every screen in both fleets. He was wearing a uniform that no one recognized, standing on a bridge that used technology beyond their understanding. "I am Admiral Sang-Min Park of the Human Imperial Navy," he announced. "You may not remember us. 70 years ago you decided we were too primitive to share your galaxy. You exiled us to the Outer Rim to die." The reaction was immediate. Veltari and Korath officers stared at their screens in shock. Humans? But humans were extinct, or at best struggling to survive on dead worlds at the galaxy's edge. "We didn't die," Sang-Min continued. "We thrived. While you fought over scraps, we built something greater. While you clung to outdated traditions, we embraced innovation. While you divided the galaxy with your wars, we united it under a better vision." "Impossible," came a transmission from the Korath flagship. "Humans don't have the technology for stealth ships." "Don't we?" Sang-Min asked. "Computer, decloak the fleet." Space around the battlefield suddenly filled with ships. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them materialized from nowhere. They dwarfed anything in the Council fleets, their hulls gleaming with an inner light that spoke of technologies beyond imagination. The silence that followed was deafening. "How?" whispered someone on the Veltari command channel. "We learned," Sang-Min replied. "In the places you sent us to die, we found the remnants of a civilization greater than anything the Council ever achieved. We studied their technology. We improved upon it. We became something new. On Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were being called in Council chambers that hadn't seen such activity in decades. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Mystery ships appearing and disappearing at will, impossible technology being demonstrated, and always the same message: humanity had returned." Chancellor Veltara stood before the assembled council, her 4 arms trembling with rage. "This is impossible. Our intelligence services reported that human colonies were barely surviving. They had no resources, no technology, no hope." "Apparently our intelligence was wrong," said Councillor Zenth grimly. "The question is, what do we do about it?" The reports kept coming in. Human ships had appeared at 12 different battle sites across the galaxy, always with the same result. Both sides found their fleets disabled, while mysterious vessels demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist. But the humans weren't just stopping battles. They were also making contact with smaller species that had been ignored or oppressed by the Council. Ship after ship reported receiving messages offering protection, trade agreements, and technology transfers. "They're building their own alliance," reported the Council's intelligence chief. "At least 40 species have already responded positively to human overtures. More are considering it." "With what are they bargaining?" Veltara demanded. "Technology that makes our best equipment look primitive. Medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries. Manufacturing systems that could end scarcity forever." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just back. They were offering the galaxy something better than the Council had ever provided. "We need to respond," said another counselor. "Send the fleet. Demonstrate that the Council still has power." "With what fleet?" Zenth asked bitterly. "Half our ships are damaged from the war. The other half are spread across 1,000 systems trying to maintain order. And even if we could gather them all, what good would they do against ships that can appear and disappear at will?" In the Kepler system, Admiral Sang-Min was receiving reports from across human space. Operation Revelation was proceeding exactly as planned. Humanity was showing itself to the galaxy piece by piece, demonstrating their power while offering alternatives to Council rule. "Sir, incoming message from Earth Command," reported his communications officer. The image of Fleet Admiral Dongwu Park appeared on the screen. He was the supreme commander of all human military forces, the man who had planned every detail of humanity's return. "Status report, Admiral," Dongwu said. "Phase 1 complete," Sang-Min replied. We've demonstrated our capabilities to both major powers and made contact with 37 minor species. Intelligence reports show panic in council chambers and growing unrest in their territories. Excellent. Begin Phase 2. It's time for the grand gesture. Sang-Min nodded. Understood. Setting course for Nexus Prime. The human fleet began moving through space using their instantaneous transportation technology. They appeared at strategic points throughout council space, always just long enough to be detected before vanishing again. It was psychological warfare at its finest, showing the enemy that nowhere was safe, that humanity could strike anywhere at any time. But the real shock came when 50 human ships materialized in the space around Nexus Prime itself, the Council's most heavily defended world. They hung there like dark angels, their presence impossible to ignore. "This is Admiral Sang-Min Park to the Galactic Council," came the transmission. "We request an audience." The council chambers were in chaos. Some members demanded an immediate attack. Others called for negotiations. A few suggested fleeing to safer systems. "They're sitting outside our capital," Veltara said, her voice shaking. "How did they even get past our defenses?" "The same way they've been doing everything else," Zenth replied. "With technology we don't understand." "What do they want?" The answer came in the form of another transmission. This time it wasn't Admiral Sang-Min speaking. It was a woman in elegant robes, standing in what appeared to be a vast governmental complex. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," said Chancellor Mi Young Choi of the Human Federation, "I am here to offer you a choice. The galaxy is changing. The old ways of doing things, the hierarchy based on age rather than merit, the hoarding of resources while billions suffer, the endless wars over meaningless boundaries, these things belong to the past." She gestured, and holographic displays appeared showing human colonies, human technology, human achievements that dwarfed anything the Council had ever accomplished. "We offer you partnership in building something better. A galaxy where progress is rewarded, where knowledge is shared, where conflicts are resolved through wisdom rather than warfare. Join us and help create a future worthy of all our species." The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. "And if we refuse?" Veltara asked the empty air. The answer came from Admiral Sang-Min, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "Then you'll be left behind while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. The choice is yours." Outside Nexus Prime, the human fleet waited patiently for an answer. They had revealed themselves to the galaxy and offered their terms. Now it remained to be seen how many would be wise enough to accept, and how many would be too proud to admit they had been wrong about humanity. The age of council dominance was ending. The age of human leadership was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 18 hours without a break. Representatives from across known space sat in their curved seats, arguing about humanity's ultimatum while human ships waited patiently outside their capital world. Chancellor Veltara looked older than her 400 years. The stress of the past weeks had taken its toll on her blue skin, and her 4 arms moved restlessly as she tried to maintain order in the chamber. "The humans claim to control over 200 star systems," she announced to the assembly. "Our intelligence confirms at least 60 inhabited worlds in the Outer Rim that show signs of advanced civilization. Population estimates range from 50 to 200 billion. A murmur of disbelief ran through the chamber. 200 billion. Humans! When they had been exiled, the entire species numbered only 12 billion. "How is this possible?" demanded Councillor Zenth. "The Rim worlds are barren, lifeless. There are no resources to support such populations." "Apparently they found resources we didn't know existed," Veltara replied grimly. "Or they created them." The holographic displays around the chamber showed images that intelligence services had gathered from long-range scans, human cities that sprawled across entire continents, space stations the size of moons, industrial complexes that could build fleets of starships. All of it had been constructed in secret while the Council believed humanity was dying out. "The technology gap is significant," reported the military advisor. "Their ships use power sources we can't identify. Their weapons operate on principles we don't understand. Their manufacturing capabilities exceed our best estimates by factors of hundreds." What about allies? Asked another counselor. How many species have joined them? The answer was worse than anyone had feared. In the 3 months since humanity's revelation, 47 species had formally announced their withdrawal from Council space and their intention to join the Human Federation. Dozens more were considering it. The Tarachi Republic signed a mutual defense treaty with the humans yesterday, the intelligence chief reported. That gives humanity access to 30 more systems and significant industrial capacity. The Keth Confederation is expected to follow within days. They're offering too much, Veltara said bitterly. Medical technology that could double lifespans. Manufacturing systems that could end scarcity. Transportation networks that could connect the entire galaxy. No one can compete with promises like that. Can they deliver on those promises? Zenth asked. All evidence suggests they can. Our science teams have analyzed the data they've released publicly. The technology is real and functional. Outside the council chambers, the human fleet continued its patient vigil. But Admiral Dong Wu, Park wasn't idle. From the bridge of the HSV New Dawn, humanity's most advanced command ship, he was coordinating the largest military operation in galactic history. Status report from all sectors, he ordered. The responses came in from across the galaxy. Human. Fleets were positioning themselves at key strategic points throughout Council space. Not to attack, that would come later if necessary, but to demonstrate that humanity could project power anywhere they chose. Veltari Home System. 5th Fleet in position and undetected. Korath Border Worlds. 3rd Fleet ready for operations. Nexus. Shipping lanes. 7th Fleet monitoring all traffic. Dongwu nodded with satisfaction. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment. They had studied every council weakness, mapped every strategic resource, identified every pressure point that could be used to influence events. Sir, incoming transmission from the surface, reported his communications officer. The image of Chancellor. Mi Young Choi appeared on the main screen. She was in her office beneath New Terra, surrounded by advisors and military leaders. Despite the magnitude of what they were attempting, she looked calm and confident. Admiral, what's the Council's response to our proposal? Still debating, Dongwu replied. But intelligence suggests they're planning to reject our terms and attempt a military response. Expected. Are we ready for Phase 3? All fleets are in position. The moment they make hostile moves, we can disable their entire military capability. Within 6 hours. Mi Young smiled grimly. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if they insist on learning the hard way... The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert from the tactical station. Sir, massive energy buildup detected from the Council fleet. They're charging weapons and moving to attack formation. Dong Wu felt a moment of sadness. After everything humanity had offered, the Council was choosing war over wisdom. All fleets prepare for immediate action. Remember, disable, don't destroy. We want to rule a galaxy, not a graveyard. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted exactly 43 minutes. The Council fleet was impressive by the standards of the past, 800 ships representing the combined might of dozens of species. Their commanders had spent days planning the assault, confident that superior numbers would overcome any technological advantage. They were catastrophically wrong. The human ships moved like ghosts through the Council formations. Their weapons fired with impossible precision, targeting specific systems, rather than attempting to destroy entire vessels. Council ships found their engines disabled, their weapons offline, their life support systems functioning, but their ability to fight completely neutralized. Unknown weapon types, reported a panicked Veltari captain. They're not using energy beams or missile systems. The weapons seem to operate directly on our ship's systems. Shields are useless, added a Korath commander. Whatever they're firing passes right through our defensive fields. Admiral Dongwu watched the tactical display with professional interest. Quantum manipulation weapons were incredibly effective against conventional technology. By targeting the molecular bonds that held enemy ships together, human weapons could disable any system without causing unnecessary casualties. Council flagship is attempting to ram the New Dawn, reported his tactical officer. Let them try. The massive Veltari dreadnought accelerated toward the human command ship, its hull glowing with the heat of maximum engine output. But as it closed, the final distance, the New Dawn simply vanished. The human ship reappeared behind the Council fleet completely unharmed. Impossible, whispered Veltara from her flagship's bridge. They just disappeared. Instantaneous transportation, Dongwu explained over the open channel. One of our more recent innovations. We can move ships, fleets, even entire populations, anywhere in the galaxy without crossing the space between. The implications hit the Council forces like a physical blow. If humans could teleport their ships at will, then no defensive position was safe. No retreat was possible. The entire concept of space warfare had just become obsolete. Surrender, Dongwu said simply. You've seen our capabilities. Further resistance will only result in more disabled ships and more humiliated crews. One by one, the Council ships powered down their weapons and stopped fighting. They hung in space like helpless prey while human vessels moved among them with casual efficiency. This is Chancellor Veltara, came a transmission from the Veltari flagship. We request terms for surrender. There are no surrender terms, Mi-Young Choi replied, her image appearing on every screen in the disabled fleet. There is only a choice. Join the new galactic order we're building, or be left behind while everyone else moves forward. What kind of order? Veltara asked. One based on merit rather than tradition. One where resources are shared rather than hoarded. One where conflicts are resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. One where every species has a voice in its own future. The offer was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every world, and every species simultaneously. Human communication networks had been integrated with every major planetary system during the years of hidden preparation. There was nowhere the message couldn't reach. You have 72 hours to decide, Mi-Young continued. After that time, the Human Federation will begin implementing the new order with or without your participation. In the days that followed, the galaxy transformed before everyone's eyes. Species that had been oppressed for centuries eagerly joined the Human Federation, bringing their systems and populations into the new alliance. Others, seeing the writing on the wall, negotiated carefully worded agreements that preserved their dignity while accepting human leadership. The Veltari Empire, proud and ancient, was among the last to submit. But when they finally realized that resistance was futile, they negotiated a face-saving arrangement that allowed them to maintain their cultural identity while accepting integration into the larger human system. How did they do it? Veltara asked during the final surrender ceremony. How did a species we dismissed as primitive become so powerful? By not being what you expected, Mi-Young replied. You thought our willingness to question authority was a weakness. It was actually our greatest strength. You thought our rapid adaptation was primitive. It was actually advanced beyond your understanding. And now we build something better than what came before. Together, if you're willing. Alone, if you're not. The choice had been made. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, not through conquest, but through demonstration of superior capability. The age of the Council was over. The age of the Human Federation had begun. But as Mi-Young stood in her office, 3 years had passed since the end of the Council era, and the galaxy was transforming in ways that few could have imagined. Seok-Jin Kim stood on the observation deck of the new administration complex orbiting Nexus Prime, watching construction. Ships build the framework for what would become the largest space station in galactic history. The structure would house the Federation Parliament, a governing body that included representatives from over 300 species across 2,000 star systems. The Veltari delegation is here for their integration review, announced his aide, a young woman named Ari Park, who had become one of the Federation's most skilled negotiators. How are they adapting? Seok-Jin asked. Better than expected. Their engineers are excited about the new technologies we're sharing. Their scientists are making breakthrough discoveries every month. But their politicians are still struggling with the concept of merit-based leadership. Seok-Jin nodded. That was the challenge with most of the older species. They had spent millennia believing that age and tradition automatically conferred wisdom and authority. The human approach, promoting based on capability rather than seniority, was revolutionary to them. What about their military integration? Complete, Ari replied. Admiral Veltara herself requested assignment to the Federation Defense Force. She's commanding a mixed fleet in the Perseus sector. That had been one of humanity's most successful innovations. Instead of dismantling the military forces of joined species, they integrated them into a unified command structure. Former enemies now served side by side, united by common goals rather than divided by ancient prejudices. The door chimed, and Hyunwoo Lee entered the office. As Admiral of the Federation Peacekeeping Force, he was responsible for maintaining order across the galaxy's most troubled regions. "Status report from the border sectors," he said, settling into a chair. "The Korath Reformation is proceeding smoothly. Their new democratic government is implementing the social reforms ahead of schedule. Opposition: minimal. When people see their living standards improve by 300% in 2 years, they tend to support the changes. That was perhaps humanity's greatest advantage. They didn't rule through fear or force. They ruled through results. Federation worlds enjoyed unprecedented prosperity, technological advancement, and personal freedom. It was hard to oppose a system that made everyone's lives better." "What about the holdout systems?" Seok-jin asked. Hyunwoo's expression grew more serious. 17 star systems still refuse Federation membership. They're calling themselves the Independent Coalition and claiming we're trying to destroy galactic diversity. Are we going to force them to join? No. Chancellor Choi's orders are clear: no coercion. If they want to remain independent, that's their choice. But they can't interfere with Federation operations or threaten member worlds. It was a policy that confused many of the galaxy's older civilizations. In the past, powerful empires expanded through conquest and forced assimilation. Humanity offered something different: voluntary membership with tangible benefits. Species that joined prospered. Those that didn't were simply left alone. But the real transformation was happening at the individual level. Across the galaxy, beings who had never dreamed of leaving their home worlds were now traveling freely between star systems. Students from primitive worlds studied at advanced universities on human colonies. Scientists from different species collaborated on projects that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. On the world of Kepler-7, Dr. Yumi Tanaka worked alongside researchers from 12 different species in a laboratory that would have been impossible under the old council system. They were developing medical treatments that could extend lifespans across all known forms of biology. "The Veltari genetic structure is more complex than we initially thought," reported her colleague, a Korath scientist named Vexith. "But if we can adapt the longevity treatments to work with their 4-strand DNA, we could add 2 centuries to their natural lifespan." "What about side effects?" asked another team member, a small mammalian being from the Tarachi Republic. "None detected in the trials. Human medical technology is remarkable. It works with biology rather than against it." That was typical of human innovations. Where the council species had developed technologies that required other beings to adapt to their systems, humans created systems that adapted to other beings. It was a fundamental difference in philosophy that was reshaping galactic civilization. But not everyone was happy with the changes. In the Independent Coalition, leaders gathered in secret meetings to discuss what they saw as the human threat. Their spokesman was a former council member named Karth-X, whose species had lost significant influence when the merit-based system replaced traditional hierarchies. "They're destroying everything our ancestors built," he declared to the small assembly of holdout leaders. "Traditions that survived for millennia are being swept away in favor of human innovations." "But their innovations work," pointed out another leader hesitantly. "Coalition worlds are falling behind in every measure of progress." "Progress isn't everything," Karth-X replied. "What about honor? What about respect for our elders? What about the natural order that has served the galaxy for thousands of years?" It was an old argument, and one that humanity had heard many times before. The fear of change, the desire to preserve familiar systems even when they no longer served their purpose. Human leaders had learned to be patient with such concerns while continuing to demonstrate better alternatives. Chancellor Mi-young Choi herself visited the coalition worlds several times, not to threaten or demand submission, but simply to listen to their concerns and offer solutions. "We're not trying to destroy your cultures," she explained during one such visit. "We're trying to preserve what's valuable about them while improving what isn't working." "And who decides what's valuable?" Carthax had demanded. You do, Mi-young replied simply. Every species in the Federation maintains its cultural identity while participating in the larger community. We don't impose uniformity. We celebrate diversity. It was true. Human colonies had developed their own distinct cultures while remaining part of the larger Federation. Veltari worlds maintained their artistic traditions while adopting human technologies. Korath systems preserved their philosophical schools while embracing democratic governance. The galaxy was becoming more unified without becoming more uniform. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the attitude toward conflict itself. For millennia, the galaxy had been divided into competing factions that viewed other species as rivals or threats. The human approach treated them as potential partners in building something greater. When the Zephyrian collective attempted to expand into Federation space, the response wasn't military retaliation, but diplomatic engagement. Human negotiators met with Zephyrian leaders and offered them a choice: join the Federation and share in its benefits, or remain independent but respect established boundaries. What if we refuse both options? The Zephyrian commander had asked. Then, you'll find yourself very alone in a galaxy that's moved beyond the old ways of doing things, Admiral Hyun-woo had replied. The Zephyrians chose to join. Like so many others, they discovered that cooperation produced better results than conflict. 5 years after the end of the Council era, the galaxy had become a place that few could have imagined. War was virtually extinct. Scientific advancement was accelerating at an unprecedented pace. Trade flowed freely between systems that had been enemies for centuries. Chancellor Mi-young Choi stood in her office on New Terra, reading reports from across the Federation. Agricultural worlds were producing surplus food for the first time in their history. Industrial systems were meeting manufacturing demands while reducing environmental impact. Research stations were making discoveries that promised even greater advances in the future. We've come a long way from the species that was too primitive for the Council, her aide observed. Mi-young smiled. We haven't changed that much. We're still asking too many questions, still refusing to accept that this is how things have always been done is a good enough reason to keep doing them. The Council was right about one thing. We are disruptive. But in a good way? In the best way. We disrupt systems that don't work and replace them with systems that do. The report she was reading described the latest expansion of the Federation. 12 more species had requested membership in the past month, drawn by reports of prosperity and freedom on member worlds. At the current rate of growth, the Federation would include the entire galaxy within a generation. But size wasn't the goal, quality was. The Federation succeeded not because it was large, but because it worked better than any system that had come before it. As Mi-young looked out at the stars, she thought about the journey that had brought humanity to this point. Exiled. As primitives, they had become the galaxy's leaders. Dismissed as too violent, they had created the most peaceful era in galactic history. Cast out for being disruptive, they had built the most stable civilization the galaxy had ever known. The irony wasn't lost on her. By trying to get rid of humanity, the Council had given them exactly what they needed to become something greater. Isolation had fostered innovation. Adversity had built character. Exile had provided the opportunity to develop without.